Hey guys, it's Danny. Today we're gonna make some updates on some orchids. You might have noticed that I've kind of renamed my updates series to stories, and this is because, well, I do blab a lot, don't I? So I think it's more fitting. And every time I do like to give a theme to these stories, just for a little added twist, a little added interest, so it's more entertaining or useful for you guys. And today's theme will be orchids that changed my mind. Let me explain. You know how there are preconceptions about orchids? You hear about certain species or varieties and you think, oh, I don't think I'm gonna do good with this one. I think it's gonna be fussy. I think it's gonna be this and that. And then when you finally decide to have it, you discover it's really not all that bad or not all that good sometimes. So that's one category, but there's another, at least for me. Sometimes you can make an impression for a whole variety or genus just by having one individual. And many of the times we don't have all that much luck with an individual, and that makes us a little fearful to try other individuals of the genus. And I have actually been through that lately, and I discovered that sometimes it's really not something we do, not something with our environment. It's just something with that individual. So I drew some conclusions, especially this year, based on some orchids, which I'm going to show you today. These orchids have changed my mind in a way or another and have influenced my decisions, so I think they're worth taking a look at. First off, the Parra Phalaenopsis labucensis. I talked about it yesterday and one of you guys really wanted me to make an update on it. This is her. Do you remember how big she was when I purchased it? I'm gonna show you some footage on the screen right now. She was advertised as a seedling, a very young plant, and she was. Considering how big this orchid is at maturity, she was really tiny. So because of her pattern of growth, I try to keep her mounted, but as you might know, mounted orchids don't work out so great for me. I don't have the type of lifestyle to be able to take care of them, so my orchids do better potted. So in the end, I potted this orchid. I will need to pot it again because she's becoming a little bit too heavy for this tiny pot, not necessarily because she outgrew her pot. But this is her today, after about 2 years since I purchased it. Dun, dun, dun. Look at this one. I'm actually gonna place her on the shelf above so you have some perspective. There we go, that's her. So the progress of this orchid is unbelievable. So I think I purchased it with a leaf that is not here anymore. This one was just growing, it matured, and then she grew this one, bigger, and then this one, which is quite impressive. And then she is growing another one. That one started maybe a month ago and is already about a couple of centimeters long. So she is growing nicely. She's also growing some roots at the moment. I'm gonna put her down now that you know how big she is. So if you think about it, in 2 years, this is how much she grew. Obviously, in 2 years, she didn't bloom. She was too young. But 2 years kind of went by like this. And you know me and seedlings, at some point I told you I don't really have the patience for seedlings. Well, it turns out that it has to do with the lifestyle or with the point in your life. I am older now, obviously, and things are a little bit more calm. At the time when I said that, things were, I don't know, they were a bit too rushed. I needed to move out, there was a lot of things happening at the same time, and after a while of things being just so fast and so new, I really am enjoying slower things, I guess. And the wait for this one to grow was really not all that difficult. Also, when you have other orchids to keep you occupied, you can actually forget a little bit about the seedlings, care for them, yes, but not be so anxious about them. And that's what I did with this one. And at some point I looked at it, saw how big this leaf grew, and I wondered, when did this even happen? And that's really the story with quite a lot of my seedlings. And I pulled out here the Dowianas, which are my pride and joy. This one is about a year old or a year and a half. This one is a little bit more recent in my collection, and they were both seedlings. You might know how tiny the Dowianas are when you purchase them. It's really hard to find a mature one. But look how big they grew. This one actually arrived without any good roots. This one, I don't remember, to be honest. I just watered them, but they're growing beautifully now. They have produced a lot of roots. They're growing new growths, and yeah, they're just doing their thing on the shelf. I care for them. I take a look at them pretty often, but I just don't stress over them. And that's surprising because I was really convinced seedlings are really not for me. But mainly the Parra Phalaenopsis, but also the Dorianas and my other Cattleya seedlings, kind of changed my mind about seedlings. It's not all that bad. Yes, if you have only seedlings, waiting around to see an orchid in bloom is frustrating because you're just not going to see them for the next 2 to 3 years. But if you have even Phalaenopsis or a few other orchids to keep you busy with their flowers, I just really enjoy seedlings at the moment. I don't mind that they're slow because once every few months I just realized how big they grew, how well they're doing, and it just makes me very happy. It's actually very rewarding to see this journey, and you can imagine when they will first bloom. And I will make the story of video. It's just very rewarding. It's a part of the hobby that I didn't really experiment or actually experience too much. I've always purchased mature orchids, but seedlings, they do have a charm of their own, and it's just a joy to see them grow. And then there's the very bad first impressions and the very good second impressions. This is actually more relevant to this year, I feel. I don't know, I kind of have the sensation that every year I kind of discover something, or I go on a certain line or path. I have a sort of an epiphany every year, and this is one of them actually. So for some of you who are older on my channel, you might know I don't have, or I didn't used to have, the best of luck with the Rhinanthera monachica. It's one of those orchids that I always wanted to have because I love the blooms, and my first one was about 4 or 5 years ago. And that one, I kid you not, you'll see footage on the screen, I had until this year or last year when I decided to just give it up. So in 4 years, it barely grew anything. It was always super fussy for me. It always had some weird spotting on the leaves that for the life of me, I could not figure out. I was thinking, okay, what am I doing wrong? I'm not giving it enough sun. I should put it in the sun. I'm not giving it a good medium. It doesn't like leca. It doesn't like inorganic. Something I do is wrong, but what is it? And to top it all off, the hybrid, another hybrid that I just absolutely love, this is the Rhinanthropsis Mildred Jameson. It is a Monachica hybrid. This is the second individual that I have as well because the first one did not make it. I purchased it from Catasetum 2 and it just didn't do anything. It just looked so incredibly fussy. And then I saw a few other YouTubers stating that they feel it's a little fussy, this orchid, and there's something finicky about it. So I had such a bad first impression about Monachica and its hybrid, but at some point I thought about it logically. Okay, let's retrace our steps. This is what I like to do whenever something goes bad. What did I do that could possibly determine a bad outcome? When my first Monachica, when I received it, it looked okay, it was tiny, but then I put it in a bad medium. She contacted, I think, a sort of disease and didn't get rid of it ever since. So maybe the disease is holding back my plant. Maybe that particular individual that I had a sort of sensitivity. Maybe it was faulty, let's call it like that. It wasn't the strongest. So maybe there was nothing that I actually did afterwards that was the problem. Maybe the orchid was the problem from the get-go. Again, with the other one, I thought, well, what is the probability that I'm so awful at orchids and at this particular hybrid that it just withers away within a few months, doesn't even try to create a new root system? What if it actually is a problem with the individual, not with me? So I went and I bought myself some replacements. And lo and behold, I am not kidding when I'm saying I purchased this one not even a year ago, and she was tiny. You'll see some footage on the screen, and just look at her now, and she's growing so incredibly well. She had a flower spike when I received it, but on transport it didn't make it. You know me, I don't have luck with these guys, but now apparently I'm having luck with growing them. She's actually loving leca, loving self-watering. I see all sorts of new roots. These are tips actually. Let me get you in closer because I love the roots on the Monachica. They have a really pretty color. Alrighty there. See how pretty they are? And they're just super healthy and growing. And this orchid appears to be super healthy and growing, and it grew so incredibly fast. 5 years I waited for my older one to grow, and it didn't really grow. In size, I mean. And this in a few months? What is even happening? This one, again, it's the very same thing. I don't have a transparent pot with this one, but she's doing absolutely fantastic. Did not have any issue. Purchased it less than a year ago. actually after the Monachica, and just look at her. She's doing great. She's growing. She did not skip a beat in comparison to my previous one. And I actually didn't do anything special to these guys. I just pot them up, do my best in offering the conditions they need, make sure that I don't do any mistakes with the fertilizer, but I've already been doing that for years, and the difference between these guys and the previous ones that I had is just immense. So at this point, there is a reality, and the more orchids you will have, the more orchids you will buy, the more variety of orchids you'll have, you will discover it. It's not always about what you are doing, it's sometimes about the individual. I was telling you before in a previous video, there is no natural selection. Hybridizers don't necessarily select them. They sell them as seedlings. There's no way to tell which individual is vigorous, which is not. Chances are a batch will probably not be that vigorous, but you will not see it until the orchid grows and spends some time in a collection. And even though in many cases it is a cultural issue, I feel that those cases are very obvious. For example, if I want to grow masdevallias properly in my environment, there's something wrong with me. Of course, masdevallias, well, the vast majority of them, they're rather cool growing, and I have a hot climate. It's obvious that I don't have the right climate for them. But these are supposedly warm growers. They should do okay in my environment. So this mentality kind of stuck with me this year, and I have made some interesting purchases. Now, first of all, I kind of changed my mentality. I used to think that buying one individual of a variety and seeing how you go is the best approach, because if you don't do great with that individual, then you will not do great with other individuals of the genera, which sometimes can be very wrong. As long as you make a little bit of research before and not go for orchids which prefer conditions that are totally opposite of your environment, you cannot really go all that wrong. All you have to do is just a little bit of research. So the mentality of buying one individual and waiting around 2 years and see how it goes, I find it a bit wrong right now, and I'm saying this from experience because I used to do that. And the best example is the Sarcochilus. As I was telling you yesterday, I had this individual for 2 years and it didn't do anything, but it didn't die. But I cannot really put my finger on it, what it is with it. So am I not good at growing them? Maybe, maybe not, though it's just one individual, and drawing a conclusion for an entire genus, maybe it's not the best thing to do. Therefore, I will try out not one, but another 2. I think the lucky number is 3 individuals of the same genus, let's say. Try them out, try to make them varied, and see if all of them do bad. If they all do bad, yeah, obviously it's something maybe that I did. But if only one does bad and the other ones are thriving, then obviously there's something wrong with that individual. And this is just the mentality that I'm trying out now. Yes, it's a little bit more expensive, but I will combat that with making less purchases, let's say. So having this new mentality based on this experience, I actually purchased multiple individuals from the same genus this year. Sarcochilus, not the best example because there isn't much variety, there aren't many available, but I'm trying. One of the best examples is the summer blooming Phalaenopsis orchids. As you can see, I do have quite a few individuals, and this might come as a shock, but at some point I was fearing that I'm not really good at them. Yes, I have the Bellina for a few years. I also have the Violaceae for more than a year. They do great. However, I have 3 orchids which are not doing great. And here they are. I have these orchids for quite a while. This is the Fasciata, this is the Sumatrana. These 2 I received from one of my lovely viewers, but they were saying they weren't doing all that great for them, so they were hoping that they will do better for me. This one I purchased myself more than a year ago, maybe a year and a half, maybe 2. Now, all of these are summer bloomers as well as the Bellina and Violaceae. However, they have never ever done great. I pot them in sphagnum moss almost a year ago in the hopes that they will actually do better in sphagnum moss, but no, this is just not happening. The roots refuse to grow properly, the leaves grow very small. This one did not create a new leaf in 2 years, and no root. I mean, I hope you can see. There are no roots here. And this one, there is a root here, so that's great, but the way it's growing, something's not normal about it. At some point you do start to have a little bit of intuition, you kind of know how orchids are supposed to grow. these ones are just not growing great. And the sad part is I had all of these before I actually purchased all of my summer bloomers that I have today, with the exception of the Bellina. So I have the Bellina and these guys. And being that, okay, the Bellina was okay, but these guys were not, 3 of them were not doing great, I was just a little bit afraid of the summer blooming phals. Until I kind of started to change my mind. I actually took things logically. There is no reason why those orchids would not do great. I have a warm environment, they're worm growing orchids. Let's say they didn't like leca, I put them in moss. They should love moss. Typically these types of orchids are grown in moss. Also, the viewer who sent them to me, at least those 2, was complaining that they were not doing great for them either. So, is it me or is it them? Well, one way to find out, let's purchase some more summer blooming phals, and well, luck has it that I was right. It wasn't me, it was them, because my current summer blooming phals are growing just like my Violacia and Bellina. And actually Violacia, I purchased it afterwards. I took a plunge with her because I liked her. She's doing great. Even this Phalaenopsis, which supposedly is a little trickier, no, she's not. She's actually growing super nice. So overall, I was fearing them for a year or a year and a half just because of 3, not 1, 3 individuals which had issues. All of these guys have no issues. They're doing really, really great. And mind you, they're kind of tiny. They're seedlings. They're still growing really, really great. So in the end, I'm concluding that maybe it's really not something that I did. Maybe it is them. But really, you will not have any validation until you try out with other things. And the last thing that I want to do is actually purchase those variety, exactly those, and see how they do, see if it's a variety trait, although I doubt it, or it's indeed something with those 3. So in the case of the summer blooming Phalaenopsis, those 3 individuals changed my mind in the negative way, meaning I always wanted more summer bloomers after my Bellina, but having the experience with the other ones kind of put me off a little bit. And they are not actually the only ones that changed my mind in the negative way. Well, it sounds kind of negative. Well, changed my mind into not having particular orchids. The mottled leaf Paphiopedilums also gave me a few headaches, and I so wanted to have some of these, but at the beginning of the year and the ending of last year, I had major issues with them. I had a lot of leaf tip dieback. They were just not doing well at all, and it was a shame. And at some point I did say that I think I'm gonna focus on the green-leafed ones, because these ones, they just don't do it for me. So at the time, I did have a few though. I had this guy, which is a vinicolor one. I had the one in the back, which is the climber Paphiopedilum. And I had the Maudier one, which is an older Paphiopedilum that went through a lot. He had spider mites, anyway, bad history. So I had them plus a no ID one, which a viewer sent to me, and they all were struggling. They were all having this type of dieback. This is an older leaf, by the way. This is old damage. And that was not something new. I had issues with them for the past 2 years. Ever since I moved here, something was off with them. So I never actually purchased more. I went into the green-leafed paths more, into the multiflorals, which are doing good. I cannot say they're doing better than the mottled-leafed ones, but they used to. But at some point, just thinking about things logically, intuitively, I thought, you know what? There has to be something wrong with the medium that I'm using for them. Even in the Ceramis with the leca, even in the leca, some stuff were just simply not okay for my paths. Now, I know that I say many things can be wrong, pH, salts, whatever, but being that I am more of an intuitive grower, I do suspect it's none of that actually. I told you in one of my videos, my leca kind of pipes down with the whole pH situation. It becomes neutral at some point. Also, I showed you that for more than a year I'm using a pH down solution with leca. Also, you might remember I tried the peat experiment, and one of the orchids that was treated with the peat at the bottom in the reservoir was this guy. Because of all of these methods that lower pH, I don't suspect it's a pH issue. I tried with this orchid a different approach. I went for a terrestrial mix, something that would hold on to the water. It would not be so airy as the leca and as the Ceramis is, and just use the same water, use the same fertilizer, see if that makes any difference. And at first I wasn't actually even using bark. I was using cocoa coir from IKEA and some rocks for added drainage. That was all that I was using, because all I wanted to do is just change the medium and its properties actually. And within a few months, there were no more issues. And I knew that was the issue. Even though, you know, it's always good to test out more stuff to validate your theory, sometimes you just know. It's an experience type of thing. Maybe it's how you know your orchids, how you see them, but you just know. So the only way to test this out was to purchase more mottle-leafed paths. Yep, expensive approach, a lot of risk, not something that is okay for everybody. I was actually convinced the problem was the properties of the leca and how it behaves in my environment. And I was also convinced there is nothing that I can actually do to make it work. Well, nothing convenient, let's say, that I could do to make it work. And the best thing for me is just to change the medium. And to validate that, I just needed to buy more paths. So that's what I did. I bought more paths. And they're growing very, very well. And I'm just so happy. If I were to give it another year or two to see if things resolve themselves, that would be a much safer approach, but paths grow so slow. Until you see a flower, years will go by. So waiting around to see, yeah, it kind of works, it kind of doesn't, and so on. When I already knew, I had this gut feeling that I knew what the problem was, you know, that was just a waste of time. And furthermore, I am more convinced now that everything is okay with the medium and I can actually grow these guys pretty successfully because I have so many new ones. And when I say new, I say within this year. This guy is more than a year old, I think. Or no, he's under a year old. And just seeing everybody, how they behave without even actually touching leca or anything, just going directly into this terrestrial mix, just confirms my suspicion. The added bonus is, I will see this guy in bloom pretty soon because he has a low flower spike, and I will see everybody in bloom sooner than if I would wait around again and see how my 3 individuals are performing and so on and so forth. So in this case, it wasn't about some more sensitive individuals like the case of the Phalaenopsis and maybe the Sarcochilus. In this case, it was just a change in their medium. And it was always in the back of my mind, really. For the past 2 years, I was just seeing my Paphiopedilums just surviving, but struggling, like I always knew. But I just had to be sure. I needed to experiment, and I dragged it on for 2 years. So I'm not into doing that anymore. Now, this decision that I'm kind of taking this year to be more brave with new varieties and new orchids and to go with my instinct more is not something that I preach or recommend to everybody, especially to beginners. This is something you will develop absolutely with experience. The more orchids you see, the more failures you have. Oh, you know me and failures. I have a lot of them. So the more of these experiences you'll have, the more intuition you'll have as well. It's just not something that I have been bestowed upon. No, absolutely not. And all of these failures that I keep showing you and I had along the years, they contributed a lot. And sometimes I will absolutely be wrong in my intuition, of course, but I'm the type of person who doesn't really like to have regrets. So if I say, okay, I'm just gonna buy one of these and then wait for 3 years to see if I do okay, I'm going to regret those 3 years and not buying at least 2 more varieties just to see if there's any difference. Because imagine you buy, oh, let me show you. Okay, so imagine you buy a Phalaenopsis like this. Yes, it can happen to phals as well. This is one of the big lip phals. Do you remember them? Yeah, this is one of them, but for a year and a half, almost 2, it did nothing. It didn't wither off. It didn't create any more leaves. It tried to produce one, but then it stopped. It didn't bloom. It didn't do anything. It did create roots though. And after 2 years, it decides that, oh wait, there's something wrong with my crown. I don't know what, because it's not crown rot, but anyway, I think there's a leaf stuck there. So yeah, let's just produce a keiki after 2 years. So as a beginner, let's say you purchase yourself your first orchid, and the bad luck is that you purchase this one. and it starts to do all of these things to you. Then you're gonna be like, oh, what did I do wrong? Is it the light? Is it the temperature? Is it the water? Does it need fertilizer? Does it need calcium? What does it need? And it actually doesn't need anything, it just has a problem. But it will leave you thinking that these orchids are fussy or that orchids are not for you and you're just not gonna buy anymore. When in fact, we all know that phals are one of the most forgiving orchids you can have. And if this can happen with Phalaenopsis, it can happen with anything, and actually it does happen. As I was saying, the more orchids you have, the more orchids you buy, the more you will encounter these cases. So my philosophy now is that it's not necessarily the greatest idea to get one and then wait around to see what happens if you do good with it. It is the most economical, maybe the most responsible, but I think that it is worth having two different kinds, let's say. Especially when you're trying out new species or new varieties, I think it's better to have two. Maybe not two at a time, but definitely don't get one and then wait to see what happens. I don't think it's a good plan because there is a chance that individual has an issue. And as you could see, I'm talking about experience here. I had the Sarcochilus for 2 years now and it didn't do anything. What if indeed it is a problem with that individual? I just wasted 2 years. I cannot make a video about it now. I cannot say, hey, I discovered this about this plant. Maybe this can help you. I discovered nothing about the Sarcochilus. Maybe it is my fault, but maybe it's not. What if? So, at least from the point of view of the collector that has a lot of varieties, no, I'm not gonna go with one individual of each species and see how we do. No, at least two. I will go for 3. But again, this is something that I decided to do for myself, and I think it's a good idea for the more avid collectors, not for everybody necessarily. Let us end it here though. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know in the comments down below, do you have this experience of having super bad luck with an individual, then repurchasing it and actually having great success? Because these are not the only orchids that I've encountered this with. I showed you the Prismatocarpa. Yeah, I had 2 of those before this one, both kind of finicky, kind of not the most vigorous orchids ever. This one, on the other hand, she's growing roots like nobody's business, like nothing ever happened. What conclusion can I draw other than it might actually be an individual issue, not a care and culture issue? So let me know down below if you've experienced this and with what species or varieties. And with that said, thank you guys so much for watching and sticking around with me today. You know the drill, like or dislike this video below, subscribe to my channel for regular orchid videos, tutorials, Q&As, stories of the sorts. And if you like YouTube to notify you whenever I upload a new video, just turn on notifications for my channel. And if you're interested in my setup, the pots that I use and so on, just expand the description, I have everything listed there. And with that said, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye!